Captain Daniel Wright rubbed his tired eyes and stared at the strange message on the screen again. For 3 days, the unusual transmission had been coming through on frequencies that shouldn't have been possible for Earth's current technology to detect. The U.S. horizon, pride of humanity's small but growing space fleet, drifted at the edge of explored space while Wright tried to make sense of it all. "Captain, I've cleaned up the signal more," said Lisa Morgan, leaning over her communications console. Her fingers moved quickly across the screen. "It's definitely not human in origin." Wright nodded and moved closer. "Can we understand any of it yet?" "Parts," Lisa said. "It keeps mentioning something about worlds being eaten, consumed. The translation is tricky, but whatever they're describing, it sounds bad." The bridge of the horizon was quiet, except for the soft beeping of equipment. The other crew members tried to look busy, but Wright knew they were all listening. Humanity had been in space for less than 50 years. They had built a modest fleet of exploration and defense ships, but true alien contact remained elusive until now. Wright's personal screen lit up with an incoming call from Earth Space Command. He sighed. Admiral Keller's stern face appeared on the screen. "Wright, return to Earth immediately. That's an order." "Admiral, with respect, these signals need investigation. Someone out there is asking for help. Or it's a trap," Keller said. "Or a natural phenomenon we don't understand. Or nothing at all. The fleet is too valuable to risk on a wild goose chase." After the call ended, Wright stood silently by the viewing window. Stars stretched out before him, countless points of light representing worlds humanity might never see. Lisa approached him cautiously. "They're not taking it seriously, are they?" she asked. "No, but I am." Wright turned to her. "What's your gut telling you about this signal, Morgan?" Lisa hesitated only a moment. "It's real, and they're scared." Wright nodded and pressed a button on his communicator. "This is Captain Wright. I need to speak with Captain Powell on the U.S. Defiant and Dr. Martinez on the U.S. Discovery. Immediately." 3 hours later, Wright sat in the Horizon's conference room with the holographic projections of Grace Powell and Alan Martinez floating above the table. "This is borderline mutiny, Daniel," Powell said, her voice stern but not unkind. She commanded the Defiant, the most powerful battleship in Earth's fleet. Space Command was clear. "I'm not asking the entire fleet to come," Wright replied. "Just our 3 ships. If I'm wrong, I'll take full responsibility." "And if you're right?" Dr. Martinez asked. The scientist adjusted his glasses, a nervous habit. His research vessel, the Discovery, wasn't built for combat, but its sensors were the best humanity had. "What exactly do you expect us to do against something that consumes worlds?" Before Wright could answer, Lisa burst into the room. "Captain." Another transmission, much clearer this time. "And it's not the only one. We're picking up similar distress calls from 3 different sectors now." Wright watched Powell's hologram closely. Her expression had changed. "Send me the new transmissions," Powell said finally. "If they match, the Defiant will follow you to the coordinates." "Discovery too," Martinez added quickly. When they were gone, Lisa looked at Wright. "Will 3 ships be enough if what they're describing is real?" Wright turned back to the viewing window. 3 ships might be all humanity can spare for a rescue mission that Space Command hasn't approved. He took a deep breath. "Plot a course to the nearest transmission source. We leave in 6 hours." 4 days later, as the small human fleet approached the coordinates, they received a new message. This one needed no translation. It was in perfect English. "Unknown vessels. This is Ambassador Kala of the Nylari Remnant. If you can hear us, please help. We are the last survivors of our system. The Void Scourge has consumed our worlds, and we have nowhere left to go." Wright felt a chill run down his spine as the sensors showed what lay ahead. A star system in ruins, planets broken apart, and something vast and dark moving among the debris. All ships, battle stations, Wright ordered quietly. "We're about to make first contact." The alien ship was beautiful despite its damage. It glowed with soft blue light as it drifted among the ruins of what was once a thriving system. Captain Wright watched from the bridge of the horizon as smaller shuttles ferried the Nylari survivors to the human vessels. Ambassador Kala was taller than any human, with pale skin that seemed to shimmer with its own inner light. 4 arms moved in graceful patterns as she spoke, her large eyes blinking rarely. "We thank you for answering our call," she said. Her voice had a musical quality. "Few would brave the path of the scourge willingly." "We didn't know what we were facing," Wright admitted. "We still don't." Kala nodded slowly. "The Void Scourge is ancient. It travels between stars, consuming the energy of the core of worlds. Nothing we have built can stop it." Captain Powell of the Defiant crossed her arms. "How many other civilizations have fallen to this thing?" "Most," Kala said simply. "The great powers of our sector. The Thaxian Empire, the Vordan Collective, even the warlike Krell, all have lost their home worlds. Those who survive hide on colony planets or in deep space." Dr. Martinez looked up from his datapad. "This doesn't make sense. Something that consumes planets should leave evidence across the galaxy. We would have detected it." "Your species is young," Kala said. "Your instruments are limited. The Scourge moves through spaces between normal space. You see only the damage left behind." Commander Susan Blake, the tactical officer of the Horizon, had been quiet until now. "Ambassador, with respect, we need to see this thing. If we're going to help, we need to understand what we're fighting." "You wish to see death?" Kala asked, her voice sad. "Very well. Our sensors show it has moved to our colony world, Nylar 7. We can be there in 6 hours." The 3 human ships followed Kala's vessel to a small green planet. From orbit, it looked peaceful. Then dark tendrils appeared from empty space, wrapping around the world like giant fingers. "All ships, battle stations," Wright ordered. "Martinez, what are you seeing?" On the Discovery, Dr. Martinez stared at his readings in disbelief. It's like dark energy given form. It's literally pulling energy from the planet's core." "Can we stop it?" Powell asked from the Defiant. "Unknown," Martinez replied. "But we should try something. That planet has 3 million colonists on it." Wright made his decision. "Powell, target those tendrils with plasma cannons. Let's see if we can get its attention at least." The Defiant fired, blue streams of energy striking the dark mass. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the tendrils recoiled slightly. It reacted. Blake shouted, "Fire again." The Defiant unleashed a barrage. The dark tendrils pulled back from the planet, seeming to ripple in space. Kala's voice came through, filled with shock. "Impossible. Nothing has ever made the Scourge retreat." Blake studied her readings carefully. "Captain, our weapons are affecting it somehow. The electromagnetic pulse from our plasma cannons seems to disrupt its structure." "All ships, focus fire," Wright ordered. The Horizon and Discovery joined the attack, their less powerful weapons still adding to the assault. The tendrils of the Scourge pulled away from the planet completely, retreating back into the strange space they had emerged from. A cheer went up across all 3 human ships. Ambassador Kala stood perfectly still, her eyes wide. "In 50 years of fighting, we have never seen the Scourge retreat from prey. Not once." Dr. Martinez approached Wright with his findings. "Captain, I don't think we've beaten it. I think we've just annoyed it. But that's still more than anyone else has done." Wright looked at the faces of his crew. They were scared but determined. "Ambassador," Wright said, turning to Kala, "we need to know everything about this Scourge, and we need to contact every survivor species willing to fight." Kala's eyes blinked rapidly, a sign of strong emotion among her kind. "You would stand against the darkness when older, stronger civilizations have fallen." "That's what humans do," Wright said. "We stand up." Hours later, As the human fleet prepared to follow Kala to a hidden meeting place of the surviving aliens, a message arrived from Earth Space Command. RE2RNMMEDLATLI. Unauthorized mission. Court Martial Key in Dieng. Wright looked at the message, then at the stars beyond. Send reply. Unable to comply. Humanity needed elsewhere. The hidden space station was like nothing Wright had ever seen. Built inside a hollow asteroid, it spun slowly in the darkness between stars, far from any main travel routes. Ships of all shapes and sizes clustered around it, the last fleet of many dying worlds. I had no idea there were so many survivors, Wright said as their shuttle approached the docking bay. Kala nodded sadly. These are just the ones who found each other. Many more drift alone, waiting for the end. Inside the station, the air was thick with strange smells and sounds. Aliens of every description moved through the crowded halls. Some looked almost human. Others were completely different. Floating gas creatures in special suits, tall insect-like beings, and even crystalline forms that clicked when they moved. Chief Engineer Frank Campbell whistled low. Going to be a challenge adapting our tech to work with all these different ships. That's why we're here, Wright reminded him. Our weapons work against the Scourge. We need to share that technology. Dr. Nicole Rivera, the xenobiologist from the Discovery, could barely contain her excitement. Captain, this is the greatest collection of alien species ever assembled. The things we could learn. Focus, Doctor, Wright said gently. First we save them, then we study them. A large chamber in the center of the station served as their meeting hall. Representatives from each surviving species gathered to hear what the humans had to offer. The room fell silent as Wright stepped forward. My name is Captain Daniel Wright of Earth. We're new to space. We're few in number, but we've discovered our weapons can hurt the thing you call the Void Scourge. A ripple of sound moved through the crowd. Translator devices working overtime to convert his words into dozens of languages. A tall crystal being stepped forward, light reflecting off its sharp edges. I am Elder Zrix of the Thaxian remains. We ruled 1,000 worlds before the Scourge came. Why should we follow humans who have barely left their home system? Wright didn't back down. Because we made the Scourge retreat, even if just for a moment. Have you done that, Elder? The crystal being made a sound like breaking glass. Laughter, Wright realized later. You have spirit, human, but spirit alone will not defeat the darkness. A cloud of swirling green gas floated forward in a clear containment suit. The Vorden Collective has studied the Scourge for centuries. Your weapons create a specific electromagnetic frequency that disrupts its energy pattern. It is interesting. Security Officer Ryan Peters leaned closer to Wright. Sir, I'm not sure about this. Some of these aliens look at us like we're their next meal. They're desperate, Wright replied quietly. Wouldn't you be, if Earth was gone? A loud argument broke out between the insectoid Krell and the floating Vordens. Old rivalries didn't die easily, even in the face of extinction. Wright watched as Ambassador Kala tried to calm them down. Navigator Olivia Carter tapped some calculations into her pad. Captain, I've been mapping Scourge attacks based on data from all these species. There's a pattern. It's not random. It's hunting. Wright frowned. Hunting what? The biggest populations first. The most developed worlds. It's like it's feeding in order of meal size. Carter looked up. And based on these patterns, I think I know where it's heading next. The arguing in the chamber grew louder. Wright stepped forward again and slammed his hand down on the metal table. The sound echoed, silencing the room. We can fight each other, or we can fight the Scourge. But we don't have time for both. Elder Zrix moved closer, crystal body glinting. What do you propose, human? A coalition. Your knowledge and our weapons. Your ships and our technology. Wright pointed to Carter's map. And I know where we make our first stand. The aliens looked at each other, centuries of distrust hard to overcome. Then, slowly, Kala raised her 4 arms. The Nylari stand with humans. One by one, Other aliens stepped forward. The Vordans, the Thaxians, even the warlike Krell. As Wright looked at the strange assembly, he realized that humanity's small fleet had become something much bigger, the last hope for the galaxy. The Callisto Nebula glowed blue and purple against the black of space. The human alien fleet waited in formation behind a large gas giant, hidden from sensors. 30 ships of different sizes and designs, all modified with human electromagnetic weapons technology. On the bridge of the horizon, Lieutenant Eric Daniels explained his battle plan one last time. "The Scourge will arrive here in approximately 2 hours," he said, pointing to the holographic display. "It follows a specific pattern of movement that Navigator Carter has tracked. When it extends its tendrils to begin feeding on the Thaxian colony world, we attack from 3 sides at once." Eldersrix's crystal form sparkled under the bridge lights. "My people on the planet are ready to evacuate if we fail." "We won't fail," Wright said with more confidence than he felt. 2 hours later, darkness appeared at the edge of the nebula. It moved like ink in water, spreading and reaching toward the small rocky planet where thousands of crystalline factions lived. "All ships, battle positions," Wright ordered. "Remember the plan. Wait for my signal." The fleet moved silently into position as the Scourge extended its dark tendrils toward the planet. Wright watched, counting the seconds. "Now, all ships, attack pattern Daniels 1." The fleet emerged from hiding, ships firing in precise coordination. Blue energy pulses struck the Scourge from 3 directions. The dark mass recoiled violently, its tendrils pulling back from the planet. "It's working," Daniels shouted. The Scourge seemed confused, turning first one way then another as the fleet continued its carefully planned assault. For the first time, the coalition wasn't just making it retreat, they were hurting it. "Push forward on the eastern flank," Wright ordered. "Don't let it regroup." The ships moved in perfect formation, their attacks coordinated by human tactical systems. The Scourge began to break apart, fragments of darkness scattering across space. A cheer went up across the fleet as the last pieces of the Scourge disappeared. "We did it," Dr. Martins said in amazement. "We actually destroyed part of it." But the celebration was cut short. An alert sounded on the Discovery systems. Multiple Scourge signatures detected. Martinez's voice was tight with fear. "It's like we hit one finger, and now the whole hand is coming." 3 massive Scourge formations appeared at the edges of the nebula, larger and darker than the one they had just defeated. "All ships, defensive positions," Wright ordered. The Discovery moved to protect the evacuation ships, but it was hit hard by a Scourge tendril. The research vessel's hull cracked under the impact. "We're taking heavy damage," Martins reported, his voice breaking up over the comm. "Engine room is hit. We have fires on multiple decks." Wright made a quick decision. "Powell, cover us. We're going to help the Discovery." The Horizon moved alongside the damaged research vessel, providing covering fire while rescue teams transferred across. The Scourge pressed its attack, focusing on the 2 human ships. Inside the Discovery, Dr. Martins worked desperately to save alien refugees trapped in a collapsed section. The ceiling groaned above him. "Doctor, we need to go now." Heather Williams, the medical officer, pulled at his arm. "Almost got them," Martins said, helping a young Thaxian child from the wreckage. The ceiling collapsed just as he pushed the child toward Williams. Heavy metal beams fell on Martinez, crushing his legs. Back on the horizon, Wright watched in horror as more Scourge tendrils appeared. "It's adapting to our weapons," Lisa Morgan said, analyzing the data. "The electromagnetic frequency isn't working as well anymore." As the Coalition fleet struggled to maintain formation, Lisa noticed something strange in the Scourge's movements. "Captain, look at this pattern," she said, pointing to her screen. "It's not random. It's almost like it's being directed, like there's intelligence behind it." Wright stared at the screen, a chill running down his spine. "You're saying someone or something is controlling the Scourge?" "I don't know," Lisa said, "but I think we just made it angry." The battle raged on, their first victory now overshadowed by the realization that the war against the Scourge had only just begun. The Coalition fleet limped back to the hidden space station. Many ships showed battle damage, and the Discovery was barely functioning. In the medical bay of the horizon, Dr. Martinez lay unconscious, his legs wrapped in healing technology. "Will he make it?" Wright asked Heather Williams. "Yes, but he won't walk again without advanced prosthetics," she replied softly. "He saved 12 Thaxian children. They're calling him a hero." Wright nodded and moved on to the command center they had set up in the space station. The alien leaders gathered around a large table, their mood dark after the mixed results of their first battle. "We heard it, but now it knows we can," Wright said. "And Lisa's data suggests it might be directed by some form of intelligence." The green gas of the Vordan representative swirled faster in its containment suit. "The oldest of our kind spoke of such things. Legends tell of those who came before, the predecessors." "More legends," growled the Krull commander, his insect mandibles clicking. "We need weapons, not stories." A soft voice spoke from the back of the room. "Not just legends." All heads turned to look at an ancient Vordan, its gas form a pale, faded green. It floated forward slowly. "I am Elder Mist. I have lived 300 of your years. The predecessors were real. And they left behind knowledge of the Scourge." Wright leaned forward. "What kind of knowledge?" "Archives. Hidden vaults of technology and history. We know of one, but it lies in a system long abandoned due to Scourge activity." The room erupted in argument. Some wanted to find the archive immediately. Others thought it was too dangerous. Wright looked at Kevin Hughes, the linguist who had been studying alien languages. "If we find this archive, can you read it?" Hughes nodded slowly. "With help from the Vordans, probably." Wright made his decision. "We'll send a small team. One ship, fast and quiet." 2 days later, the U.S. Defiant, commanded by Captain Powell, slipped into the abandoned system. The planet they sought was small and rocky, its surface cracked from Scourge attacks long ago. "No signs of the Scourge currently in this system," Powell reported back to Wright. "We're proceeding to the coordinates." Hughes led the team to the surface, guided by Elder Mist. They found the entrance to the archive, buried under rocks and dust. Inside, strange symbols covered the walls of a vast chamber, and crystal data storage devices filled shelves that stretched for hundreds of meters. "This will take time to translate," Hughes said, running his hand over one crystal. It glowed at his touch, projecting symbols into the air. Back on the Defiant, Powell kept watch for any sign of the Scourge. "Anything useful yet?" she asked over the comm. "Working on it," Hughes replied. "These aren't just records. They're instructions." Hours passed as Hughes and the Vordans worked through the ancient language. Finally, Hughes contacted Wright with a grim face. "Captain, we found something disturbing. The Scourge wasn't a natural phenomenon. It was created by the predecessors." Wright stared at him. "Created? Why would anyone create something like that?" "As a tool," Hughes explained. "They designed it to harvest energy from dying stars and planets, but something went wrong. It evolved beyond their control, started consuming living worlds. The predecessors fought their own creation for centuries before they disappeared." "Does it say how to stop it?" Wright asked. Hughes nodded slowly. "Maybe. They designed something called a nullification key, a device that could shut down the Scourge permanently. But to build it, we need materials from the galactic core." "The core?" Powell interrupted. "That's where the Scourge is most concentrated. It's suicide to go there." Wright was silent for a moment. "Did they explain how the Scourge is controlled?" Lysa found patterns suggesting intelligence. "Yes," Hughes said, his voice low. "The Scourge has a central node, a heart, if you will, and it's also at the core of the galaxy." Powell's face hardened with determination. "My ship is the fastest and strongest in the fleet. If anyone's going to the core, it should be the Defiant." Wright looked at his old friend, knowing she might be volunteering for a one-way mission. The Defiant will need modifications to survive that journey, he said finally. But while you prepare, the rest of us will create a diversion the Scourge can't ignore. The largest fleet ever assembled against the Scourge gathered at the edge of the Cygnus Arm. Over 50 ships from a dozen alien species, all modified with human weapons technology. At their center was the U.S. horizon, battle-scared but still strong. "This is our most important mission," Wright told the captains over the communication channel. "We attacked the Scourge at multiple points, drawing its attention away from the galactic core." On the bridge of the U.S. Defiant, Howell made final checks on the heavily modified battleship. The hull was reinforced with Faxian crystal. The engines had been upgraded with Warden technology. And in the heart of the ship, a device waited, the components of the nullification key, ready to be assembled at the core. "Good luck, Grace," Wright said over a private channel. "Try to come back in one piece." Powell smiled slightly. "I'll do my better than my best. You just keep that thing distracted." As the Defiant slipped away toward the core, the Coalition fleet split into 3 battle groups, each heading toward a known Scourge concentration. Wright addressed his crew one last time. "I won't lie to you. This will be our hardest fight yet. Some of us won't be coming back. But today we fight not just for Earth, but for every world threatened by the Scourge." The battle began simultaneously across 3 sectors. Human tactics combined with alien technology struck the Scourge hard and fast. The dark entity responded with fury, massive tendrils lashing out at the ships. The U.S. horizon led the main attack group, driving deep into Scourge territory. Wright watched as Allied ships fell one by one around him, buying time with their sacrifice. "Sir," Lisa Morgan called out, her face pale. "I'm tracking Scourge movements. They're converging on us from all directions. They know what we're doing." "Of course they do," Wright said grimly. "That's the point. We need to keep their attention on us, not on the Defiant." 5 hours into the battle, the horizon took a direct hit from a Scourge tendril. The ship shuddered violently, and warning alarms blared across every deck. "Hull breach on Deck 4, reported Frank Campbell from engineering. "Life support failing. We can't take another hit like that." Wright looked around at his bridge crew, tired, scared, but still fighting. Status of the other battle groups. "Group 2 is down to 3 ships," Lisa reported. "Group 3 is still fighting but taking heavy losses." Another hit rocked the horizon. Sparks flew from consoles, and the lights flickered. "Engine room hit." Campbell's voice crackled through the damaged comm system. "We're losing power." Commander Susan Blake looked up from her tactical station. Her face was bloody from a cut on her forehead, but her eyes were clear and determined. "Captain, I have an idea. If we convert our main reactor to generate one massive electromagnetic pulse, we might be able to stun the Scourge long enough for our remaining ships to escape." "And the horizon?" Wright asked, already knowing the answer. "The pulse would fry every system on board. We'd be dead in space." Wright didn't hesitate. "Evacuate all non-essential personnel. Transfer to the remaining ships in our group." "Sir," Blake said quietly, "someone will need to stay behind to trigger the pulse manually. The automated systems are too damaged." Wright nodded. "I'll do it. With respect, Captain, you're needed to lead what's left of the Coalition." Blake stood straighter. "This was my idea. I should stay." Campbell's voice came through again. "You'll need an engineer to reconfigure the reactor." "I volunteer." Wright looked at his officers, Blake and Campbell, knowing this would be the last time he saw them. "Get everyone else off the ship," he ordered. "We have 30 minutes." As the evacuation pods launched from the horizon, Wright, Blake, and Campbell worked frantically in the engine room. Around them, the ship was coming apart as more Scourge attacks landed. "Reactor ready," Campbell said finally. "It's now or never." Wright looked at his 2 brave officers. "It's been an honor serving with you both." Blake smiled. "For Earth." For all worlds, Wright added, and pressed the button. The horizon exploded in a blinding flash of electromagnetic energy. The pulse spread outward, stunning the Scourge tendrils throughout the sector. The remaining coalition ships used the moment to retreat, carrying the survivors to safety. And far away, near the galactic core, the U.S. Defiant continued its mission, undetected. The U.S. Defiant moved carefully through swirling clouds of dark energy. The galactic core glowed ahead, a brilliant light surrounded by the densest concentration of stars in the galaxy. And wrapped around it all was the Scourge, its true form finally visible. "My God," Powell whispered, "it's enormous." The central node of the Scourge pulsed like a giant heart, dark tendrils stretching outward to distant stars. The ship's sensors struggled to measure its true size. "Are we too late?" Dr. Rivera asked, standing beside Powell on the bridge. She had joined the mission to study the Scourge up close. Powell shook her head. "No, Wright and the others bought us this chance. We won't waste it." The Defiant's modified shields held against the energy storms as they pushed closer to the core. According to the predecessor archives, the nullification key had to be activated directly inside the central node. "We've found it," the science officer reported, "the central consciousness of the Scourge. But our shields won't last much longer in this energy field." Powell faced her crew. The archives were clear. Someone has to physically connect the nullification key to the Scourge consciousness. Silence fell across the bridge. Everyone understood what that meant. A one-way trip. "I'll go," Powell said finally. "It's my responsibility as captain." "No." Navigator Olivia Carter stepped forward. "Dr. Rivera's tests showed my neural patterns are most compatible with the interface. I have the best chance of surviving long enough to activate it." Rivera nodded reluctantly. "She's right. The key requires a mental connection. Olivia's brain chemistry gives her a slightly better chance." Powell looked at the young navigator. "You understand what you're volunteering for?" "Yes, Captain." Carter's voice was steady. "One life to save billions. It's simple math." An hour later, Carter stood in the airlock, wearing a specially designed suit. The nullification key was strapped to her chest, a small device that didn't look capable of stopping a galaxy-wide threat. "Remember," Rivera said, checking the suit one last time. "You'll experience the collective consciousness of all worlds the Scourge has consumed. Don't lose yourself in it. Focus on activating the key." Carter nodded. "If I don't make it back, tell them Earth was worth saving." The airlock opened, and Carter pushed herself out into the swirling darkness. The Scourge seemed to sense her immediately, tendrils moving toward her like curious fingers. As they touched her suit, Carter felt the first brush of alien minds against her consciousness. Billions of voices, countless memories. The knowledge of 1,000 civilizations flooded into her. She saw worlds being born and dying. She felt the hunger of the Scourge and the terror of its victims. Through it all, Carter pushed forward, fighting to maintain her human identity. The central node pulsed before her, drawing her in. "Almost there," she whispered, though no one could hear her now. On the Defiant, Powell and Rivera watched Carter's life signs fluctuate wildly. "She's reaching the center," Rivera said. "But her mind, the strain is incredible." At the heart of the Scourge, Carter reached out with trembling hands and pressed the nullification key against the pulsing darkness. It began to glow, connecting with her mind and through her to the Scourge itself. She thought of Earth, of Captain Wright and the horizon, of all the beings fighting to survive. And now, she commanded with all her remaining strength. The nullification key activated with a silent flash. The Scourge shuddered. Throughout the galaxy, its tendrils began to dissipate, releasing enormous amounts of energy back to the worlds it had consumed. On the Defiant, alarms sounded as energy waves rippled outward from the core. "Get her back," Powell ordered. "Emergency transport, now." 1 year later, representatives from 50 alien species gathered on Earth. They stood beneath a massive monument to those lost in the war against the Scourge. Captain Wright's name was at the top, along with Blake and Campbell. Olivia Carter was there too, changed by her communion with the Scourge. Her eyes held knowledge no human was meant to have, but she had survived. The energy released is already helping devastated worlds to heal, she told the assembly. Life is returning to planets we thought were lost forever. Ambassador Kala stepped forward, her 4 arms raised in a gesture of respect. In our darkest hour, when ancient races with vast empires had fallen, it was humanity, the youngest among us, who taught the galaxy to hope again. A new galactic council had been formed, with Earth at its center, and the remaining ships of humanity's once small fleet now led peacekeeping missions to help restore order to a healing galaxy. Carter looked up at the stars, visible even in the daytime sky. The Scourge was gone, but the knowledge it had gathered lived on in her mind. "We were never alone," she said softly, "and now we never will be again."